What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. A lot of you guys have been asking me to start the offseason content, being that the New York Giants only got 5 games left, and we're going to have Jake Fromm at the quarterback this week. And of course, it does not look very promising that the New York Giants have any opportunity to play meaningful football down the stretch, especially after seeing how Mike Glennon played this previous week, and the fact that Daniel Jones, more than likely, if he doesn't miss the whole season, will at least probably more than likely a couple more games. And if they lose to the Chargers and get to 4-9, well, you could scrap it up. And a lot of you guys, I'm sure, that are watching this video, and rightfully so, I understand your line of reasoning, will be rooting for the New York Giants to lose, to give themselves the best opportunity to get the highest draft pick possible. I personally am not one of those fans, but I never, ever knock people that feel that way, and I think it's completely understandable. It is still in the best interest of the team. You want the New York Giants to get the best pick possible. So I understand why Giants fans' sights are already on the offseason. Now, this is not necessarily an offseason video, but it is certainly something, and I'll probably have a video up talking about potential GM candidates, being that I think Dave Gettleman's going to be gone in a day or two as well. But I think this is going to be a major topic in the offseason. What are the New York Giants going to do at the quarterback position? Daniel Jones, of course, has been with the New York Giants now for 3 years, was drafted 6th overall. And like I said, we all know that Dave Gettleman more than likely is going to be relieved of duty, and if he moves on, suddenly there are no attachments to Daniel Jones. So far with the New York Giants, if you just look at Daniel Jones' stats, this is what he's produced. I mean, not good. He's got 8,398 career yards, 45 touchdowns, 29 interceptions, and an 84 QB rating. I'm not going to get into the in-depth details. I know PFF ranks him high on deep ball throws, so on and so forth. And there are parts of his game that I understand that people see. I understand what the New York Giants saw him from a physical skill standpoint. He's got mobility. He's got underrated arm strength, at least coming out of college. And I do think he's fairly accurate on the deep ball. However, when you look at Daniel Jones, if you're being completely honest with yourself watching this video, do you view him as a franchise quarterback? There's no doubt about it. I bring it up all the time. Daniel Jones has been provided with about as bad of a situation as you could have asked for. He was drafted to fit in Pat Shermer's scheme. We know the story. They bring in Jason Garrett. The scheme didn't work. He threw 24 touchdowns in his rookie year. And a lot of people have come at me and criticized me for one of my bold predictions this year, thinking as a fan that I thought that Daniel Jones could progress as a quarterback. And I thought it was a reasonable take. Of course, maybe my 30 touchdowns were a little bit outlandish. It was a bold prediction, but I don't think it was unreasonable to think that Daniel Jones could have progressed as a quarterback. That does not mean that I ever thought that Daniel Jones was a franchise quarterback. I saw several people on Twitter, several Giants fans asking me, do you think he could have a Josh Allen jump? No, he's simply not and never will be Josh Allen. All you need is a set of eyes. Is Daniel Jones a guy that I believe if he's in a really good situation can win games? Yeah. People ask me, could he win with the New England Patriots? You just saw Mac Jones, and I know the weather conditions. People say that. Do I think Daniel Jones can win games and have a winning record with the Patriots? 100%. I saw Matt Castle go 11-5 with the New England Patriots. I see a quarterback with Mac Jones, who in my opinion is what jumps off the page other than his intelligence to you with him, that is 9-4. If Jones was there, could he win games? Yeah, I think he could. And we'll see if that opportunity presents itself with another organization if they're set up well. But is Jones a guy that makes me drool? Is Jones a guy that elevates the team around him? And I think that's what you have to ask yourself. Have we seen instances here and there? Yeah. And I think that's why we get excited as fans. And listen, I'm a fan and I root for him more than anybody. I want this guy to succeed more than anybody. I was the guy that had the draft reaction when we drafted him in 2019, 6th overall, that was cursing like a lunatic. Okay? I am the guy that would look like an absolute fool if Daniel Jones went on to become the next Eli Manning. And nobody is rooting harder for Daniel Jones to be the next franchise quarterback than me. I'm a New York Giants fan. I always put the team above my opinions and hope that I'm proven wrong in that scenario. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be. I don't think and never thought Daniel Jones was a franchise quarterback. I was hoping to be proven otherwise. Like I said, I thought with the addition of Golladay, being that he was in the scheme for a second year, could he put up similar numbers to that of his rookie season, getting Saquon Barkley back? There was reasons for hope. Of course, the offensive line never worked out. There were injuries, and the Giants did nothing to address it in the offseason. Kenny Galladay's been hurt all year, and Daniel Jones simply just has not progressed enough. The red zone production hasn't been there. Can Daniel Jones get better? Sure. I hear a lot of people tell me that he could be like Alex Smith. And Alex Smith is a pretty good example, actually, if I'm being completely honest with you, because if you look at Alex Smith's first 6 years in the NFL, He was horrible. I mean, I have the exact numbers in front of me right now. You want to talk about unfamiliarity? He was through like 4 different offensive schemes. He started out 19-31 in terms of his record as an NFL quarterback. He finished his career at 99-67. Before Jim Harbaugh got there in 2011, he threw 51 touchdowns and 53 picks over his first 5 years in the NFL. His first year with Harbaugh in 2011, when they get him set straight, and when people ask me what coach would I be interested in if they move up from Joe Judge, a big reason is Jim Harbaugh, due in large part to what he was able to do with the 49ers as soon as he stepped in there. He got him to have a 13-3 record and throw 17 touchdowns and 5 picks. Alex Smith, we all know, went on to make 3 Pro Bowls with the Kansas City Chiefs, but he had Andy Reid and he had Jim Harbaugh. And to me, Alex Smith is still not enough to be a franchise quarterback. You look at those teams that had success, the San Francisco 49ers with Alex Smith, who I don't doubt, if Daniel Jones was put in those spots, could potentially achieve what he did. I'm not saying he would. It doesn't matter. To me, Alex Smith was never a franchise quarterback. And the 2 teams he had success with felt that way. The San Francisco 49ers went to the NFC Championship game with Alex Smith. They replaced him midway through the next season, even though he had a winning record, and brought in Colin Kaepernick, who they had drafted in 2012. Then he went to the Kansas City Chiefs. What did the Chiefs do after a few years of Alex Smith playing good football there? They drafted the guy that was going to replace him in Pat Mahomes. So even if Daniel Jones was able to reach those heights in terms of being a winning quarterback, I don't view him at this point in time, and I hate to say it, as a guy that elevates the players around him. The way that I analyze Daniel Jones is a quarterback that is good enough to win in a very good circumstance. And most decent to good quarterbacks in the NFL should be able to do that. Do I think he could do what Teddy Bridgewater does? I 1,000% believe that. Maybe you disagree if you're watching this video. But I don't think he's a guy that I view as a guy that raises the level of the players around him and a guy that I want to build this team around long term. A guy that I think about, you guys know that I'm a New York Knicks fan. He reminds me, and I'm not trying to knock Daniel Jones. I like Daniel Jones, and I'm not even comparing him as a player. But one player that Knicks fans were obsessed with, and they used to make tons of excuses for, and they hoped that he could mature as a player, was Frank Ntilikina. Frank Ntilikina was a guy with a lot of upside, right? The New York Knicks drafted him 8th or 9th overall at the point guard position, and he had all the attributes. He had the long arms. People thought he was a great defender. All you ever heard about Frank Ntilikina was how great of a form he had on his jump shot. But the ball never went in. And it's the same thing with Daniel Jones. People say, well, he doesn't have the scheme. Daniel Jones got the great mechanics. Daniel Jones got the great, skill set, yada, yada, yada. Doesn't have the help around him. And I agree with all of that. But with the New York Giants, at least, the ball's not going in the net. Much like it didn't with Frank Ntilikina, Daniel Jones is not putting enough points on the board. In today's NFL, for him to be putting up the touchdown totals that he is, just is not enough. And I fully recognize it's not all his fault. The question that now comes up for me with Daniel Jones is, what is the long-term plan? What do you do? I've been very outspoken in saying that I do not think the New York Giants should draft a quarterback in this year's draft, and maybe my opinion will change. Listen, I'm a content creator. I have to look at every different avenue, even though I may not want it, of what the New York Giants could do. If the Giants bring in an outside general manager, something entirely possible, would they draft a quarterback? Of course. Daniel Jones has not been successful there up until this point. He'd have no attachments to the new general manager, and if he likes a quarterback in this draft, he could go and do that. I've watched some Kenny Pickett. I've watched some of the quarterbacks in this draft class. Matt Corral's another one that you hear about. Do any of those guys make me drool? I'm going to do more research, and I'll let you guys know over the offseason. But as of now, I would tell you no. From what you hear from every expert, this is one of the worst draft classes in the last decade. So if it's me, at least as of now how I feel, if the New York Giants drafted a quarterback in this year's draft, they'd be doubling down on the mistake that they made in 2019 when they selected Daniel Jones. They selected Daniel Jones and put him in a scenario where he really could never succeed. Daniel Jones, I think, could have succeeded with a team like the New England Patriots, with a team like the Cleveland Browns. He is not a quarterback that could elevate the talent around him. And at least as of now, that's the way I feel about the quarterback pool in this year's draft. And if they draft a quarterback and I still feel the way that I do now, I will do the same thing that I did with Daniel Jones. I will give him every opportunity possible to prove me wrong. But if you ask me what's the right decision, I don't think it is the right decision with the team the New York Giants currently have to draft a quarterback in this year's draft. Now, if you want to take a quarterback, say in the 3rd round that you think has upside that there is no financial commitment to past next year, being that you're paying him peanuts on a 3rd round contract, have at it. if you want to, bring him in and he can either compete with Daniel Jones or be a long-term backup for the guy that replaces Jones, or if Jones takes off in his 4th year, I have no problem with that. But in a weak quarterback draft class, if that's the way I feel before the draft starts, I am not going to be on board with that. When I first started on YouTube, listen, I was guilty of it. I'll be the first to say it. I've said it on other channels before. At times, I felt like when I first started, before I took this a lot more seriously, at times, I let the fan base impact my thought process. I don't do that anymore. I'm going to say things that I feel, and a lot of the times you guys watching this are going to disagree with me. You're not going to like a lot of the things that I said. But in 2019, I'll be the first to admit, I let you guys impact my opinion of Dwayne Haskins. And you guys know I wanted Josh Allen. Watch the reaction video, and I definitely had Haskins above Jones. But in my heart, and in my brain rather, my heart said, I'm not going to be upset if we take a quarterback. My brain said it is not the right time to take a quarterback. I watched the New York Giants fail Eli Manning for 6-7 years, and there was not an elite quarterback prospect in that draft outside of arguably Kyler Murray, who at the time nobody knew whether or not he was, who was not on the board when the New York Giants were selecting. So in my brain, I thought it was a horrible decision to select a quarterback in that draft, and I would think the same thing this year, unless there's a quarterback that absolutely blows me away. I don't want to bring in a quarterback here to be a top 10 to 12 quarterback long term. I want to bring in a quarterback here that's a drop-dead gorgeous 10. I want a quarterback here that has top 5 potential. I want a Josh Allen. That's what I want. Now, of course, if I improve the team around the future quarterback, that's another scenario, because then I maximize the potential and I could potentially make quarterbacks look better than what they really are, similar to a guy like Mac Jones. He's 9-4 with the New England Patriots, due in large part to the fact that they have a great offensive line and a great defense. And, of course, Bill Belichick doesn't hurt. We certainly don't, we'll never probably have him as our head coach. But, maybe you get a new head coach. Maybe you bring in a guy like Jim Harbaugh. Maybe he does maximize the talent out of these players. Maybe Joe Judge does mature as a head coach, and you improve this offensive line around Daniel Jones and potentially your future quarterback. I never believe in forcing a quarterback pick, because when you do, you end up with what we have now. And that's a guy that's a decent to okay to pretty good quarterback who can't succeed in the situation he's provided with, because the New York Giants never had a team equipped to support him. Teams have done this for years. The New York Jets just did it again. They doubled down with Zach Wilson after they did it with Sam Darnold. Nobody would deny that Zach Wilson has talent. There's a reason he went as high as he did in the draft. Nobody would deny that Mitch Trubisky had talent coming out of college. Chicago Bears didn't set him up properly. They had a horrible head coach. They had a horrible offensive line. They did the same thing this year with the quarterback that they selected in the first round, as he is starting to struggle because there's not much of a support system. If the New York Giants want sustained success, unless they could find an incredible quarterback talent, the best way to do it is to fix the surrounding talent around the quarterback. That's when you go out and get him. But is Daniel Jones the long-term answer? No. He does nothing to make my jaw drop. He does nothing. Are there spurts? Yes. Does he have the physical attributes? Yes. But let me ask you something if you're watching this video and you're being completely honest with yourself. Do me a favor, and I'm not even talking about looking at the elite quarterbacks. Look at good quarterbacks in the league. Watch the games. 2 things that I can really complain about with Daniel Jones. 1, the first reads. There's no doubt about it. He does not scan the field as well as I think a quarterback should in their 3rd year in the NFL. And again, some of that certainly has to do with the lack of production on the offensive line. But the other thing I'll say about Daniel Jones, look at other quarterbacks around the league. When plays break down, compare Daniel Jones' improvisation skills to other quarterbacks throughout the NFL. When plays break down, when he's flushed out of the pocket, Daniel Jones is looking to get the ball out to the first guy that he can find. He doesn't process the same way other quarterbacks do. Watch Russell Wilson. Play breaks down, that guy is looking down the field. He's looking for wide receivers that break wide open. Daniel Jones has not shown that ability, at least in my opinion, throughout his tenure here with the New York Giants. Is there a play here? Is there a play there? Yeah. But I can't think with my New York Giants fan cap anymore. I got to be honest. Daniel Jones, in my opinion, is not a franchise quarterback. And if he is one, I don't think it'll be with the New York Giants. The question is, when do you move on? As always, guys, if you like what you watch, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.